how was that test? Did you? And we're so used to wanting to know if they're prepared. And that's what stresses kids out. They just want to be, heard, understood, validated. You'll have more cooperation. Just use those micro moments, to connect.
And welcome back to the Money, the Mindset, and the Mentoring podcast. Today, we've got Karen Gibson of Let It Go with Aloha. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve. It's such an honor.
Parenting. This is one of those things where we all do it, but we never learn how. And it's one of those, it's funny to think that the amount of time we spend doing this thing, but never spend time training to do this thing. How do we actually do this and do this successful? That's what I want to talk to you about.
Great question. Well, I have a 22-year-old and a soon-to-be 28-year-old, 2 daughters. So I've made every mistake in the book. When I opened Brain Builders, my tutoring company in 1999, I didn't realize I was parent coaching. Because every parent would come to me, why isn't my son doing this? How should I do that? But I think it's trial and error. No matter how many parenting books you read, how many courses you take, every child we're talking about is different, right? Your children are all different. What works for one child, you think, wait a minute, why is that not working? Or why is it having an adverse effect? Because one child, ease and flow, the other child just wants to maybe push your buttons or just has a different thinking style.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have three kids and all of them are very different. We love them equally, just in case you listen to this episode. But they're all very different and we have to handle each of those situations a little bit differently. And one of the things that I thought was interesting is you've been doing the tutoring thing for so long with the Brain Builders. And then you started, I wouldn't say pivoting, but adding the idea of saying that sometimes it's not just the kids we got to work with. It's got to be the parents too. And so you've built up this whole other program about Let It Go with Aloha and some of the other things that you're doing. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, in 2020, I was thinking of ending Brain Builders right before the pandemic. And I really wanted to do, letting go with Aloha, parent coaching. And I, in fact, launched my first book, Mama's Gotta Let Go, How to Let Go Without Losing Your Sanity. I'm not promising you that you will keep your sanity because we are talking about raising kids. But then everyone wanted distance learning tutoring. And I'm realizing, wow, I have parents and children. Mental fitness is the game we need to play to really understand emotional management. How do we handle being overwhelmed? I'm sure we'll be talking about the decreasing the decibels. That I'm going to keep that. I'll give you credit for that. But decreasing your decibel when we are on, I think a default decibel, like really 10 times what we want to speak at. But when you're triggered, you're upset, you're tired, you just want to use that megaphone without needing to use the megaphone. You know
so that is really powerful. And I want to get into that and I want to get into that element. But I first want to hit the idea of the Let It Go with Aloha and Let It Go. The book, you said Let It Go, Mama. Talk about that. Like, what do you mean by let it go?
I've been asked that, like, what is it? And especially letting go with Aloha. I think when I'm saying letting go, I'm not saying, because I had this one mom, I don't care whether you do your homework or not. I don't care. I'm letting go. That is not what I'm talking about. It's trusting your journey, trusting your child's journey. So you guide, not hover, right? And that's really hard as a parent when you see your child going off the wrong path. How do you let go? But recent studies have shown if we do too much hovering, resilience is not built. Children do not learn to trust themselves and even become truly independent, which is why you have people in their mid-20s and 30s relying like, hey, what cell phone plan should I get? How should I handle this situation with my boss? Because they were, and we mean well, right? But we don't realize we are just not allowing them to enter that world that we fear. But if you let go in a trusting way, I'm not saying let go and say, okay, there's a freeway, go for it. I'm saying that when you guide them, it's amazing how I can tell children who trust themselves and that making a mistake is not the end of the world. So many kids are saying, "Oh, I'm so scared because I'm going to get a, whatever grade." And that should not be happening. Your mental health should not be compromised when you're in the academic arena.
Yeah, and I guess there's a couple different schools around that because there's a lot of different parenting styles. When you're looking at the
Yes.
high performing parents who are expecting high performing results and they project that onto their kids in a way that's unhealthy. Then there's the other one where they're just expecting the best out of their kids because
Yes.
they know their kids can do more. And then you get to the next level of the parent where the parent, and I think this is probably the biggest group of parents, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the parents who both working jobs, they drop the kids off at daycare in the morning, they have after school care at night, they get home late at night, they're all completely exhausted, they flop down, they make dinner, they make the lunches, they do all the things, and by the time of that, it's now 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, they're rushing the kids off to bed, and then the next day starts. And then there's that class of parent. They love their kids, but because of the way that they're economically bound and the time that they have to put into their work, they're not able to spend the same amount of time with the kids that they would like to. And there's that group of parents. Would you see that as the same?
Oh, definitely. I have a partial solution for that. I went to Kona at an elementary school, and it was navigating the digital world, but it also has to do with busy parents. One dad started work at 6 because my whole thing was use those 10 minutes in the car. Those car rides can be such precious moments and opportunities where your kid connects with you, shares with you, and you listen. Listen more, lecture less. So difficult to do, but your child will connect. Every opportunity, you're making lunches, your child is there, Question, how was your day? Tell me more. Those 3 powerful words. Tell me more instead of, did you do your homework? Did you return your library book? How was that test? And we're so used to wanting to know if they're prepared. And that's what stresses kids out. They just want to be, heard, understood, validated. You'll have more cooperation. Just use those micro moments, to connect.
To be able to connect with them. I think the connection, is really important. And I think there's a big difference in how parents connect with their kids based on the time allotted with the kids. And sometimes the parent who spends less connects with the parent more, and then with the kids more, and sometimes the parent that spends more time with the kid actually gets more disconnected.
Wow, she said, Karen,
because of that
I can't
whole,
believe how
what is it,
proximity
breeds contempt,
for punishment,
kind of a concept, because they are
both sides.
They drop their guard,
when your child
and
triggers
they speak in a way that's more
you
lax.
both need a timeout
They let their
before
guard down, and they're not
words
strategic about the way that they speak. They're just more to the point, and they think that's true connection, but really what it is in my opinion, just not in control. And what's your thoughts around that? The idea of the parent who is, we'll call it the seagull parent, flies in, does some stuff and flies out again. And then the other parent who is there then stuck with all the routine elements of the relationship.
Yes.
And now what about the parent who's spending all the time with them, who is, feels like they're the ones who do the lunches, they're the ones who do the dinners, they're the ones who do the laundry, they're the ones who do all the chores related with the kids. And they get the burden of almost the repetitive nature of just sustaining and the trouble that they have in connecting with the kids just by virtue of what they're doing in the connection. Mm. Mm. Absolutely. And I had a buddy, I had a person on the show. His name was Nick Shelton, and he wrote a book called The Introvert's Guide to World Domination. And you're thinking, what's this got to do with kids? But what was interesting is when he talked about the idea of an introvert in a social environment, and what they need to do is to be able to effectively act in a social environment. Their cup is draining, and they need to go outside. They need to have a moment to just breathe, take in the fresh air, have silence, step away from people, and kind of rebuild and refill that cup so they can go back and handle the situation. So the way the introvert handles a social situation is the same way as what you're saying as a parent should be able to handle the situation with the kid is don't just act in the moment, act with strategy. And if you need to take that break before you affect that idea of the, oh shoot, it says Karen's ran out of storage. Recording has stopped. I don't know. Okay. So we're just going to keep on going. So it just means so I'll hopefully I'm going to just tag this. Just give me a second. I'm going to mark this second here because then I can cut it out. No, it's never happened before. So, which is great. It's always good to go through things. And you know what's funny is I'll probably just leave this in anyways because it's just fun to listen to. Because it's never perfect. Like parenting, podcasting is never perfect. Yeah, exactly. So when you look at that and you think, okay, well, how do you get a parent to then figure out that maybe acting right at that moment and in that heightened state of stress, that maybe that's not the right way to, move in the situation. It's better to take that pause. How do you get them to realize that? Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that makes total sense. I think too many times people think is authentic communication means it has to happen immediately, where I totally disagree with that. I think authentic communication happens when you're being authentic. And just because you're fired up with emotions does not mean you're authentic. It means you're unfiltered. And unfiltered means that you're just going to say whatever comes out. It doesn't mean whether it's right or wrong. It's unfiltered. Bad and good will come out. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No. Well, I think you can be the happy, fun parent, or you can be the strict parent. It either way, the way you communicate, it can be very different. You can communicate in high volume, or you can communicate by whispering. And I think whispering is just as powerful as increasing your volume. And I think it's probably better because they'll usually lean in to listen. Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. I'm a firm believer that martial arts is something that everybody should take. We train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a family, and I think it helps people make decisions under stress. And if you're in a position that somebody's crushing you in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they're on top of you, they're like, you can't breathe and it's hard, and maybe that you're just starting to not be able to take in oxygen. You can either freak out or you can go to your lowest form of training and build from there. And if you're able to do that under stress, then you can apply that other aspects of your life. And I think a lot of times people, they actually don't have enough stress in their life. And so they don't process stress correctly. Mhm. Absolutely. I mean, I think it's always a great idea to grade the problem when you're assessing the problem. So when the kid's freaking out, you're saying, okay, is this a 1 problem or is it a 10 problem? If this is a 10 problem and you think it's a 10 problem and I think it's a 1 problem, then we got to figure out where it actually should be sitting. Maybe I'm not understanding the value of the problem to you, or maybe you're just taking something that's very small and amplifying it. And then when you actually have a real problem, you're actually not going to be able to handle it effectively. Hmm. Absolutely. And yeah, because I might feel it's a 1, but because I just don't know the full story. And a lot of times I think the root cause analysis approach really helps. I had a friend who wrote a book, Smart Conflict. She was on the podcast. And one of the things she says is when you're getting to the root cause, you need to ask the why 5 times. And if you do that, you're going to get to the baseline of exactly what the problem is. And I think that makes a lot of sense because then you can actually really solve what the challenge is, not just what the result of the challenge is. Yep. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, when we look at the kids and we think about the parenting, there's a couple issues that happen with parenting. And, you know, we're going to hit one of them and then we'll hit the other one. The first one, well, 3 really. One we hit is the idea of the big D parents, right? The divorced parents. And kids are going between 2 different houses. Parents are maybe amenable or maybe not amiable or amenable. It's one of the two. And that's right. I'm not on the same page of which word I should use. And so the idea is they don't get along, or they do. And in those situations, how do you make it effective that that you can actually work on the same playing field and be successful as a parent? Mm, mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting that you say that because it's a firm belief that I have. I mean, I'm from Canada. We're a little different than the US. The US, obviously, freedom is everything and everything. And, and, and it's a great word until it's put into, if you go purist of that application, it's actually a terrible word because absolute freedom is anarchy. And freedom actually exists best when you have boundaries because then you can operate comfortably within those boundaries. And that's how you actually get pure freedom. And so the idea that the 12-year-old can recognize that, I find that really interesting. Mm. Hmm. Well, I love when Grant Cardone was on Graham Stephan, a guy I really respect, both of them actually. He was on his podcast, and he asked him. He said, "Do you want your daughter to be happy?" That's what Graham asked Grant, and Grant said, "No, I want my daughter to be productive because productive produces fulfillment, where happiness is fleeting." And I'm paraphrasing what he said, but it's one of those things that I think is really important. Is that when you build that resilience in that child, I think they're going to be able to find a longer version of fulfillment rather than that short fleeting moment of, great, I just had a lollipop and I feel a lot better now. Mm. Yeah, I'm going to go get a bottle of vodka. Yeah, exactly. Right. Like you're training, but that's probably training them to that response. Yeah. No, I've heard otherwise. So that's interesting that you say that because there's people who say that all the work you do to formulate the individual happens before, what is it, 8 years old or something. Mm. Mm. Oh, you're not supposed to do that? As I wear a Muay Thai shirt from Mass Academy. Yeah, you're not supposed to do that? Oh. I always tell people only at the gym are you allowed to punch your friends. Yeah. Not a good idea. Not a good idea. Not a good idea. I remember once I was at a bar one time, and somebody's like, I don't know, he was hammered and whatever, and he's trying to start a fight with me. And I'm like, dude, here's my business card. Come to the gym, and you can fight me every day. And of course, dude never showed up. But it was a funny endeavor because I'm like, there's a time and a place, man, and this is not it. Well, I was trying to get a new member for the gym, but it just didn't work. I'm always selling. Yeah, 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 because he had no answer on that one. It was pretty funny. But yeah, so we look at that, and then thinking about the next big topic, and this is probably the one you hear most often, the VG word, right? Video games and technology and all these things that parents, are having struggles with. What is your thoughts around technology, video games? Mm. My kids never do that. Mm. Mm. No. So the challenge that parents run into, especially pre-lockdowns and of the past, a lot of the parents, especially when they're busy and so they put their kids on to the video games, or even more difficult is they put their friends' kids on the video games. So now your child is the child who either A is going to be on the video games and have the social network around the friends, or B is going to now be divisive in the friend network, that they're not going to have that time with those kids anymore, and they're going to be the weird one that's not playing the video games with everybody because they're not going outside like they used to. And so what's your thoughts around that? Mm. Mm. My kids aren't old enough to get there yet. They're 14, 12, and 9 as of this recording. So they're still in that, like, our parents are moderately digestible. And so they do. So they'll still spend time with us, which is great. And so we're very fortunate that way. And I'm going to try to keep it that way. I mean, you look at other families from the outside and you never know really what's going on. But I think for us, I think we feel pretty good about it. I think we've got some pretty amazing kids. The biggest struggle I think right now is getting them connected in the school system, because the school system, we've just seen a very big shift in how they treat the nuclear family, and how they propose a lot of ideology, and whether the ideology is right or wrong, that's not my concern. But the kids just are not. They're actually going against the ideology because it's being pushed so hard, and so I think it's doing the opposite with the kids of what the intention is of inclusiveness. It's actually creating divisiveness, and you pair that with the education. The teachers are amazing, but the problem is the content is shifted in such a way that I don't even recognize math anymore. Mm-hmm. But it's so much fun. It is. I don't know. Yeah. Hmm. Well, we might agree to disagree on that one. I think having knowledge will open doors. I think a degree is. Hmm. Yep. No. No. They should go to 95. Yeah. I, Yeah, and I think, yeah, I would agree. I think there's a lot of employment that look at that. I think there's a lot of employers that don't care. They're following the Elon Musk. It's more of the mindset of, can you do what I'm asking you to do? I don't care where you learn from it. I don't care if it was formal or informal education. There's so much you can learn from podcasts. There's so much you can learn from going to the library, reading books, anything that you don't need that formal education environment to specifically learn something, maybe to get the certificate. But that in a lot of applications, other than maybe like being a doctor or whatever. But even still, there's a lot of people who are not medically. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the only people who argue that are the people who have the degrees, because it validates them because they have a degree. It's the same thing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. When I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, somebody who's a black belt will say, well, your opinion is there because you don't have a black belt. And it's like, well, no, like the belt doesn't give me authority. My knowledge gives me authority. Your knowledge gives you authority, not this little strip around your waist. Renzo Gracie says, the belt protects about 2 inches of your body. You protect everything else. And mm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, like if you feel stuck, the main thing I think is looking at what you're doing, not how you're being measured by some, political party outside of who you are. The only person's judgment that should matter is your own, and everybody else, it really doesn't matter. And then you judge yourself by your results, just not by what you study. And if you, yeah, yep. Well, I think most parents, it's because they're concerned that their kids that they have are not connected to a higher purpose. And so it's easy to point at school as a very simple higher purpose, and that they're just sort of wasting their life either playing video games or just hanging with their buddies, and they don't really have meaningful direction. And I think the easy answer is obviously to look at school, but I think the harder answer is to say, well, how are they going to define meaning in their life? No. Yeah, I'm just figuring as I go. We'll realize whether we did well or not, 20 years from now. No. Yeah. Well, I think we look back and we look at our parents and we know what we learned well from our parents, and we know what we learned, especially not to do as parents. And sometimes the things that we learn as not to do are the things that we should be doing. We just didn't like that they did it. And so I think there's a difference around that. And if you can put those into perspective and depersonify the actions, then I think you can become better at hitting those milestones with your kids. That's just my thoughts. I'm not. Yeah, I'm totally different. I love conflict. I love not unconstructive conflict, but constructive conflict where I guess it's Hegel's dialectic. The thesis antithesis produces synthesis. And if you can come up with something better by, actually directing towards a solution, I think just produces such a way better outcome. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just fortunate. I just don't get tired. I don't know. People have asked me. I sleep like 5 hours a night. I always have. And I just always have a high degree of energy typically. And I have no idea why that is. Just, I guess what it is. Yeah. Maybe that's my superpower is energy. Yeah. I don't run out of it. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. But unfortunately, what we do have is lack of time. and we could be talking forever. And Karen, it has been an absolute pleasure. And I want to talk more with you about kids. I want to talk more with you about parenting. I want you to come back on the show. I think everything that we chatted about has been a true pleasure to talk with you. And thank you for being here. Absolutely. And people, if you want to reach out to Karen, go to letitgowithaloha.com. That's the easiest way to reach Karen. And letting go with letting go. Perfect. I should just get you to say it. It's so much easier. That's right. And guys, this is the Money, the Mindset, and the Mentoring podcast. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next one.